Welcome to the Daily Tokyo Hockey Show on the FIH YouTube channel with me, Sarah Juggins. It's quarter-finals day in the men's competition at the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games, and 4 teams are continuing their journeys, while sadly 4 more are heading home. In a packed show today, we will be discussing those matches and the semi-final lineup, but first of all we're going to be talking about the first 8 days of the events as they panned out at the Oi Hockey Stadium. Joining the show today, we welcome back Cedric de Souza, currently head coach to the Austria under-18 team and previously head coach to Greece and India. We're fast learning to love Cedric's analysis of the games, and I'm looking forward to his thoughts today. Double Olympic gold medalist from 2008 and 2012, Mo First, is also joining us, straight from the Hamburg football stadium where he's just watched his team play out a 1-1 draw. We'll be speaking to Mo about Germany's performance today and how he thinks they should be preparing for the semi-finals. And completing the lineup is John Wyatt, former Great Britain and England star, who is now Director of Sport and Development at the FIH. So welcome to all 3 of you. Hi, Cedric.
Hi, Sarah. Nice to be back.
Hi, Mo. Mo is with us. And hello, John.
Hi, Sarah.
Great to see you all. So before we start talking about the matches, I just wondered, John, you're our man on the ground at the actual stadium. I just wondered if you'd give us a little bit of an overview in terms of the organisation around the competition and the matches. How have things gone so far, and how are the pitchers playing?
So yeah, as you say, man on the ground. I'm here in Tokyo. I'm sorry I joined this slightly late, but I literally had just got off the bus, having come back from the stadium, where we've had a great day of hockey, some really close matches and some really tense matches. But yeah, things around the competition. We had a few challenges at the start, but yeah, for the majority of the last week and certainly for this weekend, things have gone pretty well. On the pitch, the teams are really pleased with how the pitches are playing. They seem to be really quick, really true, really flat. But I mean, the biggest challenge by a long way is the heat, and those matches in the morning. It was over 40 degrees on the pitch today, particularly in the second match. So that's a real challenge, and I think we saw the effect of that heat on the pace of some of those morning matches. Obviously, there was some pressure as well, but yeah, we didn't quite see the free-flowing matches that we've had so far in the pool stages.
Absolutely. In terms of the people who are perhaps new to the match, new to the game, what sort of mitigations are made for those circumstances? There's slightly longer breaks, aren't there, between the quarters, and we see the cold mist being played on the players. So what sort of measures are taken and why?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, given the heat and the humidity, we've got all sorts of policies and measures, as you say, from increasing the breaks so they can have a bit of extra drink. If it gets really hot, so over 42 degrees, we actually put in a little mini break in the middle of each quarter, just again so they can get some fluids on board. But usually our quarter time breaks are 2 minutes, and when it's hot, we move them to 4 minutes, which we've been doing certainly for most of the games in the morning this week. And then the players themselves, the athletes, the teams, they're all bringing ice vests, ice towels. You'll see huge numbers of substitutions over the course of a match, and as soon as the players are coming off the field, they're putting on their ice vest. They're trying to cool themselves down, as you say, standing in front of the fans that are provided, getting in the shade of the dugouts, just whatever you can to get out of the really intense heat. It's not been hot every day. We've also had some pretty severe weather in terms of storms. A couple of days ago, we had some flooding. But yeah, we had a slight postponement of a couple of matches. But yeah, most of the time it's pretty warm. But all the teams have prepared really well. They've all acclimatized. They've all been in heat chambers and on warm weather tours. So yeah, they are incredibly fit athletes across the board and coping really well.
Yeah, and also, I mean, we ought to give a shout out to the umpires who are coping in the same circumstances, running for an entirety of a match, and also not getting those substitution breaks. So I mean, they're doing a pretty awesome job as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely, and the guys are wearing long trousers as well. So
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my final question to you before we move on to the matches today. You're someone you've obviously been to Olympic Games yourselves as a player. You've been to Olympic Games in your capacity with the FIH and other organisations. When the matches finish this time around, is there a different feel as teams troop off the pitch? Because effectively, they are finishing their tour. If they've lost, they're finishing their tournament, and then they're going. Is there a different emotion to everything? Is it a little bit more poignant?
Yeah, I think so, and particularly for the guys and girls who maybe this is their the end of their international careers. It's been an amazing Olympic Games, but it hasn't been obviously the atmosphere, the crowds, the fans that we all love and hope to get when we come to an Olympics. So yeah, there's tinge with a bit of sadness there. Clearly, those who've left already or are about to leave are doing so earlier than they would have wanted to as well. So yeah, definite sadness. But yeah, we had some teams flying out today. They have to be out of the village in 48 hours. So and there will be a number of teams will be flying tomorrow after the results today. So yeah, it's strange. It's definitely strange, and all the swimmers have now pretty much left. And talking to the athletes, the Olympic Village has a slightly different feel to it now. Usually in Olympic Games, as you move into the second week, you move into a number of athletes who are maybe enjoying themselves, having competed their competition. Now they're disappearing. So the village, which would have moved into a more noisy phase, is actually going into a quieter phase.
Yeah. We've heard those stories about the swimmers, John. We know what goes on there.
No, I'm not going to comment on swimmers.
On to the matches. We had 4 big games today, and we've got 4 big teams leaving, actually. But just to quickly rattle through the results, Australia versus Netherlands, a 2-2 draw, which Australia went on to win 3-0 in the shootout. Then we had Argentina versus Germany. We're going to hear from Mo in a minute on that one. We've just seen India versus Great Britain, and again, we'll be having a good talk between Cedric and John on that match. And Spain versus Belgium. Belgium came back from going behind to and actually won 3-1 in the eventuality there. But if we look first of all at our first match, Germany versus Argentina, Mo, I just wondered, are you able to give us your thoughts on that game?
I think Mo might be stuck in Frankfurt.
I think Mo is. Mo, are you with us, Mo? Now, I'll just give you a quick overview of that game while we just see if we can connect with Mo. So basically, Germany won 3-1. And I think that was probably quite a fair reflection of the game itself. There were no goals in the first quarter, but then for Germany, a steady trickle of goals, 1 goal every quarter after that. Argentina scored a late consolation, although I have to say, watching Carlos Retegui on the sideline, you would probably think that he was the most optimistic man in the world because he was still exhorting his team to greater levels of effort when there were just seconds left. Mo, we seem to have 2 Mo's now, so hopefully one of you can speak to us. What were your thoughts on that game? Okay, I'm going to come to John. John, you saw the game. From a German
Cedric, Cedric's got his hand up. Cedric, come on, give us your.
Lord Almighty! You want the old man to commentate, okay? Well, it was a hard-fought game, controlled possession. Both teams playing what is their known trademark style of play. The Argentines with their passionate, aggressive way that they play forward, and the Germans with their clinical performance, wearing you down, consistency, their hallmark. And they got their win through penalty corners today. 3 PC goals out of 4. I mean, brilliant. Okay, Lucas Finfeder getting 2 of them, and a great deflection by Tim Herzberg's classic hockey by a German team which knows when to pull the plug.
Yeah, absolutely. We've now got Mo rushing to another room. So what I'm going to do is move on to the next game and perhaps come back to Mo in just a moment. Are you there, Mo?
I don't know.
Oh, you are. You're here. We can hear you. No? Okay, right.
Good. We could.
You're there. Great. Mo, let's have your thoughts on Germany's performance in that match today.
Wow.
How are we doing? No. Okay.
I'm just smiling and waving. Maybe that's good.
You deserve to. You deserve to, mate. I thought the Germans were fantastic today. They played a really, really strong, calm, composed game, and for me, as Cedric has said, they scored 3 out of 4 corners, and the 4th one was a re-award. So they basically got 3 out of 3 corners, and their second corner. They clearly called a move. That move got covered by the Argentine defence, And rather than panic and just try and shoot and, see if they could carry on with the move they'd called, they actually switched to an alternative move. So they effectively went, plan A, plan B, and then they went to plan C. And even when it came to the top of the D, and most teams would have just had a shot probably, they then played another pass and deflected it into an empty net. It was a brilliant corner. Just everyone played their part, and everyone was really composed and took the right decision. And it was a really clinical, calm performance. And to me, the Germans are one of the teams that are improving steadily through the tournament. And how many times have we said that in Olympic Games?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And actually, Chris Ruhr speaking after it, he, in a quote, he said, "It's hot weather. We were playing hot-minded Argentina, and we just wanted to keep it cool and play our German style." And I think we did exactly that. And I think he's right. Let's just see if we've got Mo now. How are we doing, Mo?
I can listen. I heard every word you were saying. So I'm just trying to give my thoughts. Maybe it's working. I don't know.
It is working, yeah.
Thanks for waiting. Yeah, I agree with what you said, with what John said, especially. I thought this was the best game of very clinical, especially because they were very smart in terms of having possession of the ball, because they knew with this Argentinian team, the only really big threat would be counterattacks, because I thought they were playing very smart with the ball and not giving Argentina too much and not giving them the opportunity to. They're a bit nervous, but after that, they just had, I don't know how many, but a lot of possession of the ball. Were clinical with the corners, and also that they score is a typical, it's like the Germans play decision corners. So they're trying to, to do some.
I think Mo, we're probably going to
wave run. So
Mo, I think we're probably going to have to stop you there for a minute because it is quite a bad connection. But we'll move on to the second game of the day and see if it just comes back to you. In the second game, Australia triumphed over the Netherlands in the shootout. And I've got to say, this was a moment of sweet revenge for Australia because in the 2018 World Cup, they departed the semi-finals in the same fashion to the same opponents. And there are also several members of that Australian squad who had been quietly chewing on their performance at the Rio 2016 Games when they were knocked out in the quarterfinals through a 4-0 thumping at the hands of the Netherlands. So this is going to be a really sweet moment for Colin Batch and his men. Cedric, if you were in Colin Batch's shoes and you'd seen the performance of the German team the day before, what would your advice be to your players? How would you be setting them up for the semi-final match?
Well, the first thing is in non-ball possession, I would probably, have tighter marking near the circle, much more tighter marking near the circle. And when their players moving from the help side to the ball side to put pressure, the question is the running lines, how they come back. So they don't allow the direct balls to go through, but they force you to either play back or to play wide. So they don't, the center balls are completely cut off. That was the first thing in non-ball possession. And in ball possession, we know the Australians are really strong. They can move forward anywhere. They're to mix it up with the short and long passes, especially when going to the center. And then to use the transfer ball more onto the help side and go around the defense, because and use pace against the German defense. That's what I would tell them to do. But the Germans they can switch quickly. They're really a good team. They've got fantastic thinking capacity. So it's a question of, at that day, who's going to perform and who's going to execute.
Absolutely. If we've got Mo, I'd just like your thoughts on the same question to the German team. What if you were in the dressing room with the German team ahead of that match against Australia? What would your words of advice be? And if we don't hear from Mo, John, I'm going to ask you to fill in. I think that's cue, John.
Okay, so obviously, having never been in a German dressing room, it's difficult to imagine what they would say. But look, as I say, I think the Germans played a really, really strong game today, and I think more of the same. To be honest, they kept the Argentinian forwards pretty quiet, and that's one of the keys against Australia. Because, and again, Australia, they didn't have their best game today, but they picked up scraps in the D like they always do. They got shots on target. They're dangerous. They're sharp in the D. So you've got to restrict them. They've got a good corner routine at the moment as well, which is working well. So yeah, I think if you're Germany, you carry on doing what you're good at, which is controlling possession of the ball, and keeping that really solid defence. You won't go a lot wrong. But the Aussies showed that they were beatable today. The Dutch have not had a great tournament, but today they really asked some questions, and when it went down to shootout, it could clearly have gone either way. But a great shootout from the Aussies, particularly in goal.
Yeah, I was going to say we must mention Andrew Charter, because he was quite brilliant in the Australian goal. And I think we've mentioned a lot of the goalkeeping performances from the teams that have now departed the competition. And now is when we're going to see the true quality of these other keepers who perhaps haven't had so much to do. Mo, if you're with, are you with us, Mo?
I don't know if I'm back. You tell me.
You're back now. Great. I just wondered, we do need to speak a little bit about the Netherlands. One of the comments that was made the other day is that the Netherlands peaked for the Euro Hockey Championships, and it's very, very difficult to peak twice in quite a short space of time. Is that where you would put the reason for the Netherlands not performing perhaps as they would have wanted to at this tournament?
That would be a little bit too easy, I think. But in the end, of course, there might be some sense behind that, because they were playing in front of their home crowd, the Europeans, and it was a very tough final. Maybe there was a little bit of, satisfaction after they were winning the final against Germany and being European champions. So they lost maybe a little bit the first picks, but in the end, I believe they were all going into the Olympics saying this is it. This is the big deal this year. I highly doubt that they were focused or anything. Let's face it, they played a really good quarterfinal. They lost to probably the best team in the world at the moment, and it could have gone either way. So in the end, but after all, I agree with you, because they didn't want to finish fourth in the group stage, and they know you don't want that group, which is in exclamation marks fine, because they're still tough teams to beat, but you don't want to have Australia in the quarterfinals. That's why Germany was giving everything the other day against Holland, and I think that was really their biggest loss this tournament.
Yeah, one of the earlier shows we spoke about the importance of penalty corners, and again, if you look at the Dutch figures of 2 from 30, it's just not good enough at this level, is it, in terms of a return on penalty corners, which is probably the other reason. Yeah. The third match saw European sides Spain and Belgium go head to head in a hugely competitive encounter. Spain took an early lead, which I think probably had a lot of people quite surprised. But it was that man, Alex Hendricks, again, who scored 2 more to bring his personal tally to 11 goals, and 10 of those came from PCs. John, during this tournament, we've seen Belgium come from behind against both South Africa and Spain. Both sides they would have expected to beat, based on the rankings. And on both occasions, they've recovered. But they're a team that can start perhaps a little conservatively, would you think? And is that something that could be to their detriment against a team like India?
I don't know. I think it's easy to look from the outside in at these teams and these squads, and you try and work out what the psychology might be. The truth is that only those who are inside the camp really know what's going on within the camp, and I'd say that's true of all teams. But your question about the Dutch just then, they clearly have not been as they're not playing as well as they were in Amsterdam in the Euros, and who knows what the reasons are for that, and only they will know those. But I think if you look at the Belgians, it would be easy to say, well, maybe when they're up against teams they feel that they are better than, maybe they don't switch on right at the very start, which would go for those 2 examples you've just given. That's an easy kind of guess from the outside, but there could be all sorts of other reasons. So no, they've been very impressive all tournament, and today they didn't panic. They didn't start well. They were making more errors than I've seen them all week. First touches weren't quite right, passes weren't quite going to stick. Opportunities you'd expect them to take weren't quite going in. So things weren't quite working for them. Then they went 1-0 down, and it was 1-0 down at half time. So for a decent period of time they were behind. They didn't panic. and they've got that amazing confidence that comes with success, and you just know that if you keep doing what you do, then eventually your chances will come. And as you say, they've got such a powerful short corner routine that at the end of the day, they knew if they won corners, then they were going to score goals.
Yeah, I mean, Cedric, it's now that we start to see big performances from some of the big players. And I did feel in that game today, we saw players like Arthur van Doren, Tom Boone, Wegnes, Gautier Burkhardt. They were all starting to make their mark on the game far more than they had, I felt, in the previous matches. Do you think that's true, that these big players are now starting to really wind up and we're beginning to see them in action?
I'll just go back to what you asked, John, also the fact that, they didn't score against South Africa and didn't start off well enough against the lesser known teams. The question is that the structure of the other teams was such that they didn't give them the space that they wanted. Number one. Number two is also the fact that if the Belgian team doesn't score very early, then she puts herself under a bit of pressure. Yeah. And you could see it in today's match. The structure of the Spaniards were absolutely brilliant. They played a fantastic game. They covered all the lines. They did brilliantly in terms of not allowing the balls to go through. And from that perspective, yes, you put the Belgium team under a bit of pressure, but they've got far too much class. It would come out in the end. And the goal that they scored and the goal that the Spaniards scored was a beauty for me. The way he came into the circle, and it looked like outside the circle, but the final touch, the flick was inside, just inside. It was brilliant. Okay, deflected off a defender, went into the net. That's another issue. But the way he attacked the space and got in the circle was great. And to answer your question, I think there were a lot of players who are coming good now because they've got quality right through the ranks. And I think in this scenario, Victor Wegnes, Burkhardt, Tom Boone's goal was a blinder. Come on, yeah. The Kiko Cortes did very well in the corners, but the final finish of Tom Boone, my God, who can get that? It was brilliant. So they have the quality within themselves, and you can see them probably pressing the accelerator when they want to.
Yeah. You're right. That goal from Tom Boone, he could see the keeper had gone down, and that marvellous strike into the top of the net was fantastic, which is obviously going to worry their next opponents. But right at this moment, Cedric, even though John and I are neutral FIH people, we're hurting a little bit after the fourth game today. So India beat Great Britain. I just wondered if you could give us your thoughts on that game and just how well India showed up today.
I think for me, the most important thing was we know India can attack. But what she did today was she defended for most of the second half, with the possession stats being 59 to GB to 41 to India. So there was 17 circle penetrations by GB and 8 by India. So you can imagine the amount of pressure she could handle today. And that augurs well for the team because she's going to play against bigger teams in the semis. So, the most important thing is, can she hold the defense? And she did really well in that. The second thing for me was what India did was she used two of the substitutes which were not actually in the 16, who played a blinder today. It was Simranjeet, who was assisting brilliantly, and Varun Kumar in defense, who showed some clean tackles. Yeah. From that perspective, yes, they played a really good game in defense. They covered the lines, covered the zones. They got low on their tackles. They were all behind the ball. They were quick enough to put pressure on the ball and get their counters. They got all the balls on mistakes by GB, if you ask me. The two goals were, you wouldn't expect GB to make those mistakes from the defense of a team of that quality.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I just thought that the Indian team, they're not a team that's renowned for their physical fitness sometimes, but they looked fit as anything out there today. John, you were obviously watching the game as well. What were your thoughts on it?
Yeah, it was a disappointing start from GB. To basically not give away, but 2 turnover goals where they had their own. It was their own possession coming out of defence in their own 25, and that was a really, you could see it was a really deflating way of conceding goals as well. When you play against India, you're sort of prepared for some fantastic skills and attacking play coming at you in waves. And, if you give them too many, then they're going to score some because they're such skillful, fast, amazing players. And that's always been the case. But to therefore be prepared for that, but then concede to what they would consider to be soft goals and, through their own giveaways, that's a pretty deflating thing. That said, they then, as Cedric has said, pretty much dominated, certainly the second half, and created a lot of chances. And I think one thing that India need to make sure they do against Belgium is not give away 8 corners, because you give away 8 corners against GB and you get away with it. You don't get away with that against Belgium. So yeah, but no, hats off to India. They were definitely the better team. They defended really well, and then took their chances that were slightly gifted to them. But you've still got to take the chances, and GB just they weren't quite there tonight, which was a surprise and a bit disappointing actually. They've been improving throughout the tournament, and I thought against the Dutch, they were the better team. Against Belgium, actually, they fought really hard. It meant a lot to them, whereas to Belgium, maybe they were already they'd already come first in the pool, so maybe that was, part of the reason. But no, GB deserved their draw against Belgium, and they'll be very, very disappointed at the manner of the defeat more than the actual result.
Yeah, I mean, they've got.
Having said that, I just want to say about one player, the GB team, who's really played his heart out, is Sam Ward. I mean, he's had a brilliant tournament. Guy who came back from a major injury, you can see him, and if I were to have the Hockey India League again, he'd be my first pick. Brilliant. I mean, okay, this guy has shown so much tenacity, so much drive forward. He is a goal getter. He's a poacher. He's in the circle. He doesn't look at the goal. He just smashes in, and that ball which went past the post, it was a quick hands. Then looking at it, it just went past the post. So I think you got to, even though India may have won, there was some really good play by GB, and I think Sam Ward would take the cake today.
Yeah, and I would also say Srijesh in the Indian goal. If we talk about goalkeepers who stepped up, I thought he was fantastic today as well. But it was, I actually, as a game, had I been completely neutral, I would have. I really, really enjoyed it because I thought it was a game of cat and mouse. When I saw India get the yellow card towards the end, I thought, oh, hello, this is going to be GB's time to come back. But actually, India dug so deep, and that's brilliant. I just wonder, Cedric, we were talking before we came on air about the quality of Graham Reid as a coach. And I just wondered if you could just talk a little bit about that, because he's obviously given this Indian side just a little extra something, hasn't he?
Well, he's a good friend of mine, and he's a fantastic human being, a great coach, and a great personality. And for me, the most important thing what he's done is he's just utilized the strength of India. He hasn't tried to put in too much of tactical awareness. He's worked on the fitness. He's worked on the set plays, and most important, he's honed on the skills of the Indians. So if you look at it today, he allows them to play, to use the creativity, and he wants that. And he's asked them to start talking about themselves in the camps, to start getting to know each other better. He's made them learn English. He's done a lot of stuff which is just not hockey. And the bonding within this team is fantastic. You can see it on the pitch. They're helping each other. It's something which I've coached India. I've never seen a team so fit. I've never seen a team so driven and so structured in terms of being able to hold back in defense, put pressure on the ball. So from my perspective, Graham has done a fantastic job to bring India into the semi-finals. Hopefully she'll go back with a medal. And I think for him, all the more reason.
I mean, sorry, I was just going to say before we move on, is there going to be on those Indian players a huge weight of expectation now? Because let's face it, they are the Olympic team. They are the team that's got the historic, the most Olympic titles. India as a nation has been waiting a long time for this. What are those players going to feel a huge weight of expectation, or are they strong enough? And is Graham a strong enough leader to be able to shrug that off?
I think he's already done his job in terms of that, because the team has come into the semi-finals, which they were in the past. And if you look at the Pro League matches also, they've fought all the way. They won against the big teams. The confidence, as I say, confidence beats confidence. And they have shown it in the way they've played the entire game. To lose 7-1 against Australia, then come up the next day and beat Spain 3-0 was a fantastic performance. That showed the strength of this team going forward. So I'm not looking at it from a psychological point of view. I think she's strong enough. The players are strong enough. They're ready for the sternest tasks ahead.
Yeah, John, did you have a comment?
Yeah, well, I was basically going to make exactly that comment that Cedric's just made. I totally agree. I think any team who can be beaten 7-1, at an Olympic Games, which you've been building for years for, and turn it around and still win 4 out of your 5 pools, and then when you quarterfinal and make it to the semi-finals, that's a strong team. There's a real mental strength there. I don't know. I don't know who that's down to, whether it's down to an individual, it's probably down to a collective, but they are very mentally strong. which goes really well because they're going to go into another very tough match in the semi-finals.
I think a lot of it is also the physical fitness of this team. Yeah. The fact that they are so physically fit and they put pressure on the ball. The strikers doing so much of work in the defense by putting pressure on the ball takes off the defensive work by the defenders in terms of being able to get into structure, getting into the right lines in case the strikers are beaten. So that's where she's evolved, and that by itself is a mental strength.
Yeah, I agree. So can India beat Belgium, Cedric?
Well, if I have to wear my Indian shirt, definitely, but I think it's going to be a really hard match for India in terms of that. I think if Shree has to play way above what he's played so far, although he's played a blinder right through this entire tournament, I think look at him, even after conceding 7 goals, he came back flying in the next matches, and I think it'd be difficult against Belgium, but one can never tell. I think India has a strength in terms of speed up front to break through the defense of the Belgian team. And if she gets a couple and she plays the resolute defense she played today, who knows?
Who knows? It's certainly making for 2 really, really great semi-finals the day after tomorrow, and it'll be great to talk to you both again after those matches. So before we wrap up tomorrow's matches, we've got the women's quarterfinals: Australia versus India, Spain versus Great Britain, Argentina versus Germany, and New Zealand versus the Netherlands. A great day of hockey. I hope you both have a fine time watching it. And thank you so much for joining us today on the show. I'd just like to say sorry about the connection with Mo. I know there's an awful lot of people out there who love hearing Mo's analysis of the matches, and he will be back. Thanks to you two for being such great guests today. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thanks, John.
Cheers.